Second step is we got to get something else right. After getting your eyes right, you got to get your mind right. You got to get your what right? Mind. Oh, I'm going to say it like your mama. You better get your mind right. You hear what I'm saying? Well, some of you thinking, Shep, aren't those the same thing? They're pretty close. Nah, not exactly. Who here has ever heard a coach say, get your head in the game, son? Who's heard that before? Because every coach knows you can have your eyes on the game, but your head on the cheerleaders. You can have your eyes fixed on the team goals. Coach can put it on the t-shirt. You can know it verbatim. But is your mind right? Are you making decisions every day that are moving you towards your goal? We talked about having our eyes fixed on the king, but we got to have our mind set on the things that are above as well. The Bible talks about Romans 12:2. That was one of the scriptures you put in your dome last night. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your what? Mind. Jerry Rice, arguably the greatest receiver of all time. NFL Network a couple years ago voted the greatest player in NFL history. He was being interviewed on HBO, and they said Jerry had an incredible college career, spectacular NFL career. But the thing we want to ask you about, it seems like on the NFL's biggest stage, you had your biggest games. Everybody in this room knows the NFL's biggest stage is the what?
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. They said, Jerry, how were you able to do it? He said it was simple. He said the night before the game, he said I will play the entire game in my mind. In his what? Mind. He said I play the whole game in my mind. I see myself running the perfect routes. I see myself, man, making those catches that changes the momentum of the game. I see myself making that block that springs out running back. I see myself, if we're down in the third or fourth quarter, being the one my team leans on to pull us out of trouble. He said, I will play the entire game in my mind. Jerry Rice, the greatest of all time, got his what? Mind right. Florence Chadwick, the first person to swim the 26 miles from the Catalina Isles to the coast of California. The first time she attempted it, I want you to Google this, Florence Chadwick. The first time she attempted it, they said she had been trained and prepared to be the first person to swim the 26 miles from the Catalina Isles to the coast of California. She shows up that day, the weather, the fog is real dense, the water is ice cold, the conditions are terrible. Somebody say conditions are terrible.
Conditions are terrible.
The conditions were terrible. It wasn't the opportune time to go out and try to be the first to do this, but she tried anyway. She got into that water, she swam, and she swam, and she swam. She couldn't even see in front of her. She began to get discouraged. Her mother was in one of the boats with the people that were kind of, rowing along as she could try to accomplish this feat. Her mom said, are you okay, Florence? Can you go anymore? And she said, go as far as you can go, but just let us know. Florence continued to swim, and she gave up. She gave them the signal, said she couldn't do it. They pulled her in the boat. She was very devastated to find she only had a half a mile left to go. She swam 25.5 miles and quit. As you can imagine, being that close, it wasn't but several months later when she attempted this again. This day, reporters say the conditions were even worse. Somebody say conditions were worse.
Conditions were worse.
The conditions were even worse. But that day, she got in that water, she swam and she swam and she swam. And if you Google it today, Florence Chadwick became the first person to swim the 26 miles from the Catalina Isles to the coast of California. Well, they checked her medically, made sure she was cool, then they made her available for interviews. People walked up to her and they asked her, Florence, the conditions were even worse this time. How were you able to accomplish this today? She said it's simple. She said, I painted a picture in my mind of the coast of California while I was training, so that when I showed up here today, it wouldn't matter what the conditions were. Somebody say, don't matter the conditions.
Don't matter the conditions.
Because she said she painted a picture in her mind of the coast of California, so that no matter the conditions, she was going to swim towards the picture in her mind. Florence Chadwick got her what? Mind right. She got her what?
Mind right.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., man, one of the greatest names known associated with the civil rights movement. He's quoted as saying, I have a dream. He says, I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. He says, I have a dream that one day all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing that old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. This is after the March on Washington. It's known as the I Have a What speech. Dream. Dr. King helped an entire nation get their what? Minds right. Fellas, if you want to have success, it's not enough to have your eyes focused on the goal. You got to make good decisions every day. You got to change your mindset. You got to change the way you see the world. You got to change your perspective, your outlook. Do you see a 500-pound bad break? Or do you see a 500-pound big big break? Do you see an obstacle or do you see an opportunity? It's all about the way you see it. Somebody say opportunity.
Opportunity.
Man, opportunities of a lifetime must be seized during the lifetime of the opportunity. The reality is it's all about how you see it. In 1927, there was a famous shoe company in the United States that were ready to expand their company. And they wanted to send one of their major salesmen, their major executives, they sent him to Africa. They wanted to open up the company there and expand the company. He only been there 2 weeks. Somebody say 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
He was there 2 weeks and he sent a note back to the corporate offices. He said, please send me a plane ticket back home. I've been here for 2 weeks. Nobody here wears shoes. Well, they bring him on back. And it wasn't long later, they sent another executive out there. They sent him out there and he was there for 2 weeks. Somebody say 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
He was there 2 weeks. He sends a note back to the corporate office. He says, send me all the shoes that we have in stock. Because nobody here wears shoes. They both saw the same thing, but they saw it differently. Right. How do you see the world? Do you have your mind right? Adversity comes, but you got to remember, tough times don't last. Tough people do. Tough times don't last.